Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar with SATSA. UIF and TERS. We're an industry of acronyms, and COVID's thrown some more into the mix. UIF you'll all have heard before. TERS is a new one for us, the Temporary Employers Relief Scheme. So the big news of the week is that the Tourism Business Council of South Africa has signed an agreement with the Department of Labour and UIF to expedite the payments of benefits to employees affected by COVID-19 during the lockdown. It's important to note that this agreement pertains only to the tourism industry. So if you are logging onto this webinar, having found the SATSA webinar and you are not from that industry, please note that that agreement is only for the tourism industry. There are rules, but of course there are also lots of nuances, and this is why we thought it best to get some experts on hand today to assist us with your questions that we've been receiving. So I'm very pleased to welcome on this webinar today to help us unpack TERS and UIF, Chifiwa Chivengwa, the CEO of the Tourism Business Council. We have Desiree Connell, the Managing Member at Connell & Associates, Anthony Solomon, the Managing Partner at Solomon Homes, and we have David Frost, the CEO of SATSA as well. We have over 650 people who registered for today's webinar. I can see the clocks counting up. We're on 383 attendees, and I'm sure that's going to keep rising. So you'll forgive us if we don't have time to get through all the questions we've already received from members. Please try and listen to the general responses as much as you can and see how they answer your specific questions. If you then want to still submit a question, you can do so in the Q&A folder below. It's literally just a little folder at the bottom. You click the Q&A, write your question, and it will come through to me. If we have a chance, we'll pose those questions. There's also a chat functionality on the right-hand side, which you can use to communicate with others on the webinar. And of course, once the webinar is concluded, if you have any additional questions, you are welcome to email those to communications@satsa.co.za. communications@satsa.co.za. We will be recording this webinar as well as transcribing it for our FAQs, which will be released on the SATSA coronavirus microsite. The site, as you know, is being updated on an ongoing basis. So please keep a lookout constantly to see what's being updated on that site. If you are a SATSA member, you are also receiving our daily mailer, which provides an update of everything we have updated there on a daily basis. So on that note, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our CEO, David Frost, who will be welcoming us today. David, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Natalia, and afternoon to SATSA members and to other fellow travelers. Yeah, very important session this afternoon, and we thought, having launched the measures on Tuesday morning, it's just incumbent on us to hold the webinar and to sort of deal with questions and to unclog the process as soon as possible as we go forward. But before I begin, let me just say a huge word of thanks to our panelists, to Desiree, Anthony, for being with us, and to Chifiwa, and in particular the work that Chifiwa has done behind the scenes as the CEO of the TBCSA, interacting with the Department of Labour to basically expedite and set up this facility. So, Chief, a lot of your work goes sort of unheralded. We sort of work upwards through associations, and we've been incredibly busy, but I know you've been doing a lot of work your end, so thank you very much for that. And then, guys, thank you to Natalia for facilitating this. I mean, Natalia's been an amazing asset to SATSA in her capacity as our PR and communications manager. And it's always nice to unearth hidden superpowers, and hers is being able to facilitate and run webinars. So that's an amazing side of you, Natalia. We're grateful to have that, and we will be carrying on this process of webinars as we go deeper and deeper into the abyss. Before I get on to talking more specifically about today's webinar, I just wanted to give you an update on some of the broader issues in the industry. We had a Tourism Business Council of South Africa board meeting this morning, so brought the whole industry together, and you know, obviously there was one item on the agenda, and that was the crisis. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail now. It may well be that we look at a separate webinar where the TBCSA communicates more broadly to its members about the issues that it's taken up. But in a nutshell, what we resolved to do is that there are a number of sort of broad issues that we need to tackle going forward. There's some immediate crisis issues, and the fallout from the whole SAA Airlink, and now the fact that government has essentially turned the taps off to SAA, and what the implications, particularly to the inbound industry with people holding Airlink tickets, will be, is one of the key pressing issues. There are issues broadly associated with business relief, and we're looking at one of those measures today. But we need an ongoing dialogue with government around how we can broaden business relief and extend that to the entire industry, and not just the one or two segments that have been targeted to date. We then need to look at, and something that we're not taking our eye off the ball on, is there's something that we call legacy issues. So these are the visa issues, the NPTR issues. It's issues that we need to get sorted out while we are in the crisis, so that when recovery comes, we're not going to be hamstrung by precisely the same issues that bedeviled us when times were good. And then the next issue is an issue around protocols and how we can communicate what protocols we can put in place as the tourism industry as we would enter a phased opening up of the economy. So that's an important part that we need to interact with government on. And then finally, it's the big issue around what a recovery strategy could look like. And I think it's been hugely important that conversation has already started. There have been a number of tourism update webinars. But what we need to do, guys, is take that conversation, which is, as I said, it's been useful that it's been started, but essentially it's a couple of people talking, sitting around, having a chat, putting interesting ideas on the table. As I say, very useful, but we need to take that into a far more structured interaction with our public sector partners, where we can bring in industry expertise and marry that with the public sector expertise and look at joint strategies. We need to do this so that we don't repeat our history where we work in silos and decisions are merely communicated once they have been made. So with all those issues in mind, what we are looking at from a Tourism Business Council point of view is to encompass these issues in a proper structured engagement with government, so that we can finally take the conversation away from words and propaganda around collaboration, and really make that meaningful, where we sit together at the same table and jointly strategize at the point of departure. So enough said from my side on that. I think we are really well served with our panel this afternoon. I think we'll be able to certainly illuminate a lot of the questions that have come through. And just bear in mind, guys, we try and answer these in real time, and we try and answer them as quickly as we can. But if we can't do it immediately, we will get to your questions, and we will endeavor to get you those answers, and they will appear on the website in the frequently asked questions panel. So enough from my side. I will be part of the discussion, probably just kick off one or two issues that are pertinent to SATSA. But then I think we are in the capable hands of a skilled panel, and we'll be, I think, a lot better off at the end of it. And just hang in there, everybody. Long road ahead, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So I'm watching the number of attendees going up and up and up and up. It's like I've won the lotto. And if you have just joined us, as I explained earlier, you can pose your questions on the Q&A folder at the bottom. We are getting people who are commenting in the chat as well. Feel free to use that. As I said, we might not be able to get through all your questions, but we'll do our level best to get through as many as we can. Before we get going on the Q&A, I'd like to call on Chifiwa to unpack the agreement that the Tourism Business Council has so kindly negotiated on our behalf. So, Chief, if I could ask you to unmute yourself. and give us a little bit of a background on exactly what you've done and why it's important to us.
Thank you, Natalia, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, David, for the introductions that you've made. What we essentially have done as the Tourism Business Council, as soon as this disaster of coronavirus, hit us, we have been talking to the Minister of Tourism to say we need to be doing something around this, because we have been seeing for quite some time that our forward bookings were, dwindling. We also saw that, in fact, even from the domestic point of view, we saw that things were dwindling. So we started engaging with the Minister of Tourism to say something has to be done. There have to be some sort of a relief that will be directed to employees that are working within, the tourism industry. Subsequent to that, when the lockdown, was, I think, happened, when it started, we then had a conference call between the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Labor, the Commissioner of UIF, the Director General of Tourism, and Director General of Labor. And we said to them, we have to have something specially done for the tourism sector, because, our challenges are unique. And as an industry, we are most likely going to be the ones that are hit the worst, just because of the nature of our industry, and that it involves travel. So after that meeting that we had, it was then agreed from that meeting that, we need to have a special dispensation for the tourism industry. So what does that mean? It meant that we had to have an agreement with UIF that will ensure that the applications that are coming from the tourism industry are fast-tracked. So it's only two sectors that are allowed this fast tracking. So it's ourselves as the tourism industry and the guys from the mines, the mining council. So what it did is that, number one, it means that we're going to have a bit of preferential treatment for tourism applications. Number two is that all the applications that are going to be sent through are going to be attended, in a period of around, I would say 48 hours to probably 3 days. That's how they're going to be attended. Is that every application that's been lodged in must be entered into the link that I've sent out to all the associations, so that I can keep track of how many have been sent in. And also, when I have a meeting with the UIF commissioner, we can then discuss how many have been processed, and we can have a tally in terms of whether the service level agreement that we have done and
Chief, I think you've just disappeared there, unfortunately. I'll give you a couple of seconds. No, not. Okay, so Chief, I'm just going to park you for a sec, if that's okay. David, if I could ask you to unmute yourself. Chief was touching on a point a little bit earlier about working through the associations. And obviously with privacy concerns, we're wanting to know if we submit our TERS application via SATSA, what protocols would be in place for that protection of that confidential data that we're actually submitting.
Yeah, thanks for that, Natalia. I think let's just deal with this right up front. So, I mean, just off the back of it, SATSA is a compliance organization, and we do deal with sensitive information in the normal course of our annual updates, and that really pertains to members' financial standing and levels of turnover, and that's kept that is always kept totally confidential. So SATSA's just on to answer it in more detail. So SATSA's platform is Microsoft Exchange 365, which contains full cyber security features. Only 2 SATSA staff have access to the information. Confidentiality agreements have been signed, and the information is kept on one computer only, with various passwords to ensure security. And I just want to give everybody an assurance is once this crisis is over, all relevant information that has been submitted in this respect will be deleted. So we are operating in a way that we need to get this information and be able to act as a channel to get it through and to expedite the process, but it will be absolutely protected, and everybody's individual confidentiality will be protected.
Thank you, David. I've unmuted Chief. Chief, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, this
Okay.
network, as much as I'm connecting from all sorts of connections, I'm hoping that you can hear me now.
Yes, perfectly.
Yes, so I was about to finish up. The agreement that we signed with UIF will enable us to do the tracking of applications, and it will enable us to hold UIF to account in terms of the speed that we agreed on. We agreed that each application that is compliant should not take more than 10 days. So that is what we agreed to. And of course, that will be monitored every week. I will have a weekly catch-up meeting with the commissioner. We should be able to disagree where we disagree and go back to SLA where we need to go back and make sure that things are moving as fast as they should be. But let's use this opportunity to load all those applications that we have and ensure that whichever method that we're using to load them is done and is sent through. And also we are notified as the TBCSA to ensure that when I draw down the list of how many applications have gone through, I'm able to follow up with the commissioner and able to get some results on that. And I will communicate back to all associations.
Thank you, Chief. So we are getting quite a few questions through on both the Q&A and the chat. This is clearly a topic that is a pain point for you. A lot of the questions that are coming in are questions that are already answered on the story that was posted on the coronavirus microsite. So I'd like to urge you to please go and have a look at the information that is on the SATSA coronavirus site with regards to how SATSA and the Tourism Business Council is involved, and also the link that you should be using, the email addresses that you should be using, because all of that information is actually already online and available. At this point, I'm going to ask Desiree and Anthony to unmute themselves because we're going to dive straight into the Q&A. And we have over 60 questions. So I'm going to ask them to be short and sharp with their responses so that we can get through as many as we can. And many of them are around process. So let's start with the criteria. And a big question that has come through over the last day is, can employees apply if the employer is not UIF compliant, so has not made the latest payments? What happens in that case? Desiree, can I ask you to weigh in there?
Okay, so what the department has said is that it's not really the employee's fault if the employer hasn't complied, but then they do need to enter into some sort of an arrangement with the employer to catch up on the arrears if they haven't been paying. Obviously, if you've never registered for UIF, then there is a problem.
And that was the other question that we received a lot around, staff being commission-based, for example, salespeople or perhaps casuals who had not previously registered with UIF, and could they still claim for these staff who had never been registered with UIF? So I take it that's no.
No. We've got to remember that UIF is an insurer. So just like any other insurance that you have, if you haven't paid the premium, you don't have cover.
Right. And if I'm a sole proprietor, I would probably never have registered for UIF. So I would not be able to register and claim in that case.
Right.
Well, that's fairly cut and dried. I'm glad that we've managed to get through that. So we've had a lot of questions around essential staff and how some companies have got some staff members that have to absolutely work, and other staff members that they've managed to allow to take annual leave, or they've put them on a furloughed basis. Is it a one size fits all? If I, as a company, have decided that this is the way I'm going to treat all my staffs, I have to do it across the board? Desiree?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
So this is about survival. So it really is about doing what is necessary to make the company survive. And we have to have certain staff in place. You have to have your security staff in place. You have to have your maintenance staff in place. But you really don't need people who have to work on site. If people can work from home, then we should enable them to do that, because at the end of the day, this is about survival. So we have seen with the clients that we've been dealing with that it's not one size fits all. Each individual is treated slightly differently. But we also need to be fair. So I've said where a managing director working at 100% of the time, but he's expecting all his staff to take a cut, perhaps he should take a cut as well. So we've got to look at what's fair. So it is a very unusual circumstance. We are in a situation where we're doing things that we wouldn't have thought possible under the labour law before, but it is about survival. So we look at what we need to do and we approach each staff differently.
Okay, so if I wanted to apply for TERS for staff that were on short time, for example, would that be something that I would be able to do? Give my staff short time, reduce their salary by 50%, and then they can either claim UIF for the other 50%, or I can apply for TERS. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility now. They amended the regulations on Wednesday last week to allow for us to apply for TERS for people on short time.
Okay, so there's lots of different scenarios and caveats here. I mean, there's no kind of cut and dried. You can't say, well, I've paid my staff their normal wage for the period less 20%, and then I'm going to use the UIF or TERS funding to make up the difference for some of them, and then for others I'm going to pay 60%. Can you do that? Can you apply it so differently across your workforce?
As I said, it depends on what's fair. I mean, really what a lot of companies have done is they've had a look at what you can reasonably do from home, and they've said, we think you can do 30% of your day, we think you can do 50% of your day, we think you're going to be working at 100% of your day. So it's almost got to a situation where we're saying, we're back to an hourly rate and we'll remunerate you for what you've done.
Wow.
So
Talia, perhaps I can come in here.
Time sheets to see what you've actually produced today.
Anthony, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I think, Talia, what Desiree touched on is the amendments from last week, which clarified a number of areas that were not clear. And the first of those that listeners should take note of is that the regulation, or the qualifying criteria of the regulations, now allow a company that is only partially closed, and that effectively allows a company to, or employees or an employer to make claims under TERS where certain of the employees are unable to work while others are working. So that issue has been clarified, and it means that you don't need to apply the same rules consistently across your organizations. I see a lot of questions coming through stating that some people have got employees who are working from home. And again, if those employees are working from home, you would ordinarily, and are able to work, an employer would ordinarily pay them for their services. If they are unable to work their full hours, certainly one could look to pay an employee only part of their salary, or a pro rata portion of their salary for the hours that they're actually working. So in effect, short time. The other qualifying criteria, which was changed and was dealt with in the amendment, related to whether an employer could top up an employee's salary over and above the benefit. And that has also been clarified that that can be done, subject to certain rules, which I'm sure Desiree can touch on.
Let's touch on that, because we have had a few questions around this idea of topping up. Desiree?
Yeah, so the benefit that you're going to get from UIF is limited to the cap. So it's 38% of 17,712 Rand a month. So that is 6,730. So the top up thing is you cannot earn more than you would ordinarily have earned.
Okay.
So if I'm reducing a person's salary by 50% and say they're earning 35,000 Rand a month, what I'm going to get from UIF is not going to take me up to my normal salary.
Yeah, but it's going to be a little bit.
To be a little bit, it's enough to cover groceries, but it's not going to take me up to my normal salary.
Right. Let's talk about retrenchments. There were quite a few questions that had come through around retrenchments and whether this TERS or normal UIF process applies. So if an employee has already been retrenched, does that application go through TERS or the normal UIF process?
No, that will go through the normal UIF process.
Okay. And then in terms...
Natalia,
Yes, Anthony?
Sorry, I did see a question on that, which was rather specific, and let me try and answer it because it might assist some people. It appears that certain people had already retrenched employees prior to the TERS regulations. And it may be that those employees were still being paid their notice period during from when the regulation came into force, which was the 25th of March. In those circumstances, an employer would be entitled to claim under TERS for that notice period only. But once the employment is terminated, which would be at the end of the notice period, then, as Desiree mentioned, the normal UIF process would apply.
Let's say if a staff member had been offered and accepted a layoff scenario or a short-term layoff rather than opting for retrenchment, what would be involved if the employer needed to escalate the position for retrenchment at a later date? Would you, and I know this isn't very specific, I guess, to TERS, but would you have to retrench to one department, or would the retrenchment have to apply to all employees? I suppose it's the size of the company that dictates, correct, Desiree?
Anthony, you might like to answer that one. But,
yeah. Natalia, so there is a misconception that the option to retrench falls away under the lockdown or in terms of TERS, and that is incorrect. The requirements for dismissals related to retrenchments, or what we also call operational requirements, is covered in terms of Section 189 of the Labour Relations Act, and I mention that only because people will be familiar with the term Section 189. That option is always and remains available to employers. So it may be at this moment that some of you are contemplating the restructure of your business, you're anticipating the changes to your business because of COVID. You're quite entitled to initiate a retrenchment process right now if you want to. And that brings into question the alternatives that one always looks for when initiating a retrenchment process. And some of those alternatives are the alternatives which we're all considering at the moment, things like a layoff, things like short time, things like reduced salaries. So it is possible to initiate a retrenchment process now, to look at all of those alternatives, and if those alternatives are not feasible, then to go ahead and dismiss employees based on your operational requirements. Of course, you would be reminded to follow the correct processes and procedures that you're required to follow under the Labour Relations Act.
Thank you, Anthony. So we've got quite a few technical questions that I'm hoping Desiree can assist us with. And one is around this idea of TERS using credits, so the number of years worked by the employee. How are those credits calculated? And what is the maximum number of months that an employee can receive this benefit for?
So TERS is not linked to credit.
Okay.
Specifically not. It's a special fund that's outside of the normal UIF legislation, which is making it really interesting, and that's why the regulations that have come through are very different. The regulations seem to indicate, and I think on the MOA, and I'm sure other people will confirm that, seem to be for a 3-month period. If after that an employee is retrenched, they then go on and claim retrenchment, and basically the credit is based on 1 day's UIF for every 4 days that you've contributed, and you would need to have contributed for 4 years to get the full 12-month benefit.
Okay, and the UIF calculation for employees who are on reduced time, do they top up what we've paid, or do we top up what they pay? That's a question from a company. So again, that you've really answered. The company can top up.
Yeah, because the amount that you're going to get from UIF is going to be a fixed amount.
Okay, all right. In the event that employees claimed UIF for reduced salaries, but no claim has been approved as yet, can the claim be retracted, as the understanding is that you cannot apply for UIF for reduced salaries as well as apply for TERS? Desiree, want to weigh in on that? Yeah,
you can't do both. Remembering that you can only be paid by UIF once, and my UIF number is my ID number, so they would pick up that there's a double application. So I would withdraw the individual applications and apply for TERS.
Okay, you've just mentioned something that's triggered. I have received so many questions from people who say they cannot find their UIF number. They cannot, who do they get their UIF number from? So it's literally your ID number.
No, the individual person's ID number is the UIF number. So any individual employee who goes to claim is using his UIF number. But where the confusion comes in is that you have a number that has been allocated to you by SARS, under which you pay your UIF number, but you have another number that you registered as a company with the UIF commissioner with.
Okay.
And for UIF applications, they don't need the number that you're paying to SARS, they need that UIF number.
So the one question we received is, what if you submit your UIF to one UIF number, but you have two different PAYE numbers? One payroll split into two after a few years, and the second company was never registered with a new UIF number, although you pay UIF to SARS on both payrolls. Can you submit both payrolls under one UIF number?
It's an interesting question. You should be able to, because basically SARS pays that across to UIF and they would be paying it on a single number. So I would think that that would be the case, but we can investigate that for you.
All right. Nowhere could we pick up.
What is the problem is if you don't know what your registration number is for your company with the UIF commissioner, if they send me an email, I'll be able to get that for them.
Okay, you probably get inundated. Is there a way that they can get that information?
Unfortunately not, because you would normally get it through the call center, and the call center is closed.
Right.
But I have contacted UIF who's been prepared to look it up for me.
You have ways and means, Desiree. You have ways and means. Right. Nowhere could we pick up whether a company must be tax compliant and whether this is a requirement to apply for TERS. Can you please confirm if it is a requirement to be tax compliant?
There's nothing in the registration that indicates that. Anthony, I haven't seen that anywhere.
Anthony, have you seen that anywhere?
No, I haven't seen it, and it doesn't appear to be part of the regulations.
Okay. If a payment goes to the employee, do they also have to submit bank statements? Desiree.
So that is something that I think has changed in the last with the online applications. It does not look like they're looking for bank statements anymore. They're only looking for a certified copy of your bank account.
Okay. All right. So we've dealt with.
I don't think they're looking at whether a company can afford to pay. I don't think they're looking at that.
Okay. If you sent all your employees on leave, does their being on leave affect your submission in any way?
Let me answer that. Natalia, the issue is that if they're on annual leave, I'm assuming you're talking about annual leave, then they are being paid. So they are earning a salary, and it will then have an effect on an application in terms of TERS. One of the qualifying criteria is that an employee has not been paid or has not been paid their full salary.
Okay, so Desiree, I think at this point, it'd probably be a good idea for you to talk a little bit about how they are evolving the process, because this question was around the completing leave remuneration amount or not. And we have another question around whether applications must go through the UIF email or whether they can be done through the new online system. Do you want to just unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, so that's new today, and we're still finding out about it. But they are trying to simplify the process as much as possible. I mean, I think they've had over 50,000 applications, so I hope they've got the capacity there. So we now have a new online system, and the online system has to be used. But perhaps Shafira can talk about that a little bit.
Chief, if you could unmute.
I'm here. Look, the online system just came in, I think, last weekend. That was after we signed up with UIF. The commissioner did tell me that there will be an online system. I haven't used it myself. But I will encourage that, you go ahead and use it, register, use it. The biggest part is that, once you have used and you've you're able to lodge your application for your employees, just notify us. There's a link that I sent through, and I saw that SATSA did send it through to say that please input the names of the employees that you or the names of the company that you use to apply. So use it. It is something new that may further fast track the applications and the outcome of the application. As long as it takes less than 10 days, I'm quite happy about that. And if it makes your life easier, it's better to do it. And as I've said, the deal that we've signed with UIF is for 3 months that the payments are going to be made, but we signed the contract for a full year on the basis that we do understand that the recovery of our sector is not going to be 3 months. We pretty much have written off this year. Our recovery is going to be next year, probably June, July. We're going to start to see some normalcy, then. So we've signed a full year, but it's a negotiation as we go, and I will continue to negotiate with the commissioner to ensure that our industry is prioritized. So go ahead and use the online system and also use the email system. Just make sure that you notify us of all the applications that you've put in so that we can follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to call on you in a second just to answer another question, but Desiree, just to lead on from what Chief was saying, does the fact that this online system now exists make it much easier for us to complete the process, essentially? What change is there for us?
So the forms have been simplified. They're not asking for MOAs anymore. There are all sorts of changes that have come through. So it is a lot easier to work with.
Okay, great. Chief, if you can unmute yourself just quickly again. I wanted to check in with one of the questions we received, and I know this has happened to a few people where they have applied to TERS on behalf of their employees previously, but they've not had any feedback. Should they resubmit now based on the fact that we have this agreement, or should they just follow up? What would you suggest?
I think what they need to do is there's a link there, the link that we have created. I would like to know how many have submitted even prior to us signing the deal so that we can push this application, forward from our side. So I wouldn't say apply again. If they've sent the right information in the first place, it should still be relevant. I would say rather complete that. It's an online quick thing where we can be able to collect the information. And I can just draw out information and send it to UIF's, senior leaders to look into it. That's what I would encourage them to do.
Okay, and before you go, the MOA states as a requirement a letter of authority. Is this still required?
Well, a letter of authority, I think it was a letter of authority if a company is applying for its employees. Again, when we signed the deal, it was that, and the whole thing came with the amendment to the directive, where you have said, well, if an employer is applying for an employee, there has to be a letter of authority and the MOA, of which the employer would sign to say that they will then turn over that money to employees within 2 days. So I would suggest that it is done. If we're using the old methods, let's get those letters in. The biggest thing here is that I don't want UIF to start to say we didn't process this because we didn't have a letter of authority. And then it becomes another delay, it becomes frustrating. So let's complete it. And if there's any difficulty, I can communicate back to SATSA, then I can take the matter directly to the commissioner, to the DG of labor, or to the minister. But let's complete it, and let's make sure that we have all the information that we need to submit, correctly. With the high volumes of application, I don't want us to be sent back and forth because we missed an I or we didn't put a dot. Let's do all we can, and if we use the online system, let's upload everything that we can so that we found compliant and we can get the money quickly.
Okay, thank you, Chief. For those of you who are still wanting to pose questions, there are loads coming in on the Q&A and also on the chat. I can see you helping each other, which is exactly what we should be trying to do. Also, this is being recorded and we have all your questions, so we will endeavour to respond to as many as we can after the webinar as well on the SATSA coronavirus website. Desiree, So we've had a few questions around the TERS system not capturing the UIF number, for example, or it's bombed out. What is your experience? Have you had any issues with the TERS system at all?
Yes, we've had we have had problems, and then, like all new IT systems, it's a case of just trying again, and then trying to get through to the exchange system. So it's not working perfectly, but yeah, it seems to be more when you're uploading documents, but it's not always accepting the documents that you're uploading.
Okay.
But it's just trying again until it gets through.
Right. Okay, so a few more questions around application. We only have a SARS registration number for UIF and not the Department of Labour. Can I use this number, or how can I obtain the Department of Labour reference number? Through you, hey Desiree. You seem to be the only one who's got that power.
Yeah, I'll just compile a list and get my contact to look them up, unless Shafira has a contact that can do it. But yeah, it's very difficult at the moment because you can't get through. On the radio this morning, they asked the question and they were advised to send an email through to the TERS email address. I'm not confident they could get a response because that's an automated response.
Right.
So
and
I think
yeah. Anthony, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, this is a question around directors of the company signing a letter of authority to allow you as an MD to do the application on behalf of your staff. Must all directors sign that letter of authority?
Generally, no. The mandate or authority of a director is ordinarily contained in the company's memorandum of incorporation. The managing director would ordinarily have the authority to deal with these sorts of things. So one can assume that the managing director would be empowered to sign on behalf of the company. Those sort of things can always be remedied through a resolution from the board post the event in any other way.
Okay. Desiree, I don't know that you'll be able to respond to this, and I've received quite a few questions today around this. One of the questions, or at least one of the fields that had to be completed, was around minimum wage. And there seems to be this lack of understanding of what the minimum wage is for the hospitality sector, and then within that, the different levels of seniority. Is there a table that tells you what the minimum wage is for specific sectors, and then within that different job types?
Okay, so again, when the regulations were amended last week, they said we can just use the minimum wage for that. They've taken away the requirement for sector minimums.
Okay, so that's 3,500 Rand then, essentially.
That's all we need to use, yeah.
Okay, all right. If an employee has already submitted individually and received the out-of-office response to refer them to COVID-19 TERS company application process, can we then, as a company, still add them to the National Disasters Payment Excel that we submit as a company? Desiree.
Okay, I need to know why that employee wanted to do it by themselves.
Very brave person.
Yeah, but yes, absolutely, you could add them.
Okay, all right. So we've
unless the person is on maternity leave or claiming for another reason.
What other reason could there be?
Ill health benefits, unemployment benefits.
Okay.
So I need to answer that question with understanding of why the person applies separately.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of it here so that we can get back to that person and just get an understanding. While I just scroll down to some of the other questions around payments. Chief, just to let you know that we're getting a lot of feedback on the chat about the call center not working. So what I will do is I will download the chat and I will send that through to you so that you can have a squiz at the comments that have come out. I don't know if you have any insights around the call center you'd like to weigh in on.
I'll take that up as soon as we finish the call with the UIF commissioner or the DG to get to understand what's going on. So I will give feedback to David later today after I've spoken to the commissioner.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Chief. Okay, we're going to deal with payments now. Yes, Desiree.
The telephone number that they've given for the TERS dedicated line is working. But the general call center for UIF has closed down. So if anyone's got a query, they should phone the number that is dedicated to TERS.
Right. Okay. So we will obviously have people asking us what that number is, and we will make sure that that number is available on the SATSA website. You can go to the coronavirus SATSA website and have a squiz there. It will be in those resources, so we will put them there. Right. Okay. So we're going to go to payments now. Are the amounts claimed on a per month basis? In other words, if we submit now, we're submitting for the month of April, and any pay the employee is due to receive will be their April pay. Desiree?
I think we're going to have to resubmit again, and I think that's important, because I think as we go down this process, things are going to change. So people who are on short time now might not be on short time next month. So I think it is going to be a monthly application.
Okay. If employees were put on reduced salaries for 3 months as of April, however, each month the salary amount reduces. So you might get 70% in April, 50% in May, and 30% in June. You're now calculating this on a monthly basis. So you would, I suppose, need to take that into account. Would that be correct? Yes,
So the amount you're going to get from UIF is going to be limited to the benefit amount. So from between 3,500 Rand and 6,730 Rand, depending on your salary. It's not going to be determined by what you're getting paid.
Okay. So it's completely not, it doesn't look at what you're getting paid by the company at all.
It's going to look at what you get paid by the company, because they want to make sure that you're not going to earn more than you would have normally earned. But it's not going to change the benefit that you get.
Okay. Right. So we've, and I am conscious that we have a lot of Q&A questions that have come in, but we've also got 60 questions that we received prior to the webinar. So I promise we will try and deal with as many of them as possible. I'm not ignoring the Q&A folder. It's just that we've got loads of questions that have already come in prior to the webinar. So if we can just deal with those, and if they answer some of the questions that have come into the Q&A, then at least we've managed to get through those. What about commission? Is commission included in the calculation, or can an employer claim maximum benefit based on a 0 basic salary and then top up the employee's pay with commission, for example? We would like to deal with that.
Well, yeah, I think the definition of remuneration is as contained in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and in terms of those employees who are commission earners, one would ordinarily look at the average salary that they've earned in the past 90 days. So that would be the salary the starting salary that one would look at.
We've also received a lot of questions around the sliding scale of payments. And I must say that I'm looking at 5 of them at the moment, and they're all very, very specific. So I wondered if either Anthony or Desiree could weigh in and just explain a little bit about what the sliding scale of payments is. How is it calculated?
Okay, so what the Act is saying is that your benefit ranges between 60% and 38% of your salary, up to a maximum benefit of 17,712 Rand. So the calculation for working out what that sliding scale is very complex. I can let you have it if you think you have the mathematical ability to resolve it. But basically what it's saying is that if you're earning at the minimum wage, you will get 3,500 Rand. If you earn above that level, you're going to get somewhere between 60% and 38%. So the more you earn, the smaller the percentage you're going to get. So I can't tell you exactly what you would get if you were earning a salary of, say, 8,000 Rand a month, but it's going to be round about 52%. Of salary. So if you understand, at the bottom, you're getting 60% of salary, and anyone who earns more than 17,712 Rand a month is going to get 6,730 Rand and 56 cents, which is 38% of that amount.
Okay, I see Rob has actually said in the chat that he has a document that he can give as a result that can give you the result of the percentage that you will receive if need be. I'd be interested to see that document. I'm sure Desiree would be interested in seeing the document too.
They did say they were going to post something on the website, but they haven't.
Okay, right. What about if a payout is made directly to a staff member? Does the company have a way of keeping track who has been paid and who hasn't been paid? Or will the company be notified when someone has been paid?
this is for a person who's applied individually.
They haven't actually specified. So I would, if they've applied through the company, yes.
Under the term system, the company is going to be given the money, and then they have to transfer the money to the person's bank account. But an individual person claiming would have to be someone who's now unemployed, so either retrenched or dismissed for one reason or another. And no, you wouldn't be able to track what they're getting.
Okay, so that's why it really should go through the company, essentially. Okay.
Go through the TERS system.
All right. Okay, so let's go on to the period of time. So is the TERS benefit only applicable for the month of April during lockdown? Because we face many more months of no income. Could be 6 to 12 months. I assume in the Gazette they've specified the time period. It wouldn't just be for the month of April, would it?
So, Natalia, the regulation, the wording is not entirely clear. There is one interpretation which suggests that the TERS is, it's clearly for a period of 3 months. It doesn't say when it starts and when it ends. There's one interpretation to say that it's available for the period from when it was issued, which is, I think, the 25th or 27th of March, for a period of 3 months. But another interpretation simply says that where a business has been affected by COVID-19 and its employees are not being paid or only being paid a reduced salary, then they will be entitled to the benefit for a period of 3 months. So it remains to be seen how that is interpreted. For the moment, I think we can assume that it runs for a period of 3 months from when it was issued. But as I say, there is a second interpretation, which would be that the maximum that claim that an employer can put in or employees can put in is for a period of 3 months. However, I suspect as this thing moves, that period may well be extended or changed, and I think listeners are advised to wait to see what announcements are made in that regard.
Thank you. Chief, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, a lot of questions around, and you have mentioned it, but let's just reiterate it. So people saying, how long am I going to take to get my money? The debit orders go off on the 1st. How long after submitting all the documents will payment be made? Would you just reiterate what that period of time or that expected period of time is?
Okay, so thank you, Natalia. So what we have agreed is that as soon as the application is sent through, it should take about 48 hours to verify it, verify bank accounts and everything. Make sure that, there is a UIF number and everything else that has to go with. And then we said between 48 hours and day 10, the payment should have been made. It could be made earlier. So it's from the date of lodging the application, it's 10 days. That becomes day 1, and then we go up to 10 days. And then we should be able to track that and make sure that money comes in 10 days. Number 2, in terms of how long this is going to last, this is for 3 months. I've had a conversation with the Minister of Tourism last week. It's for 3 months as an initial start, but we have signed a contract with UIF for 12 months. So that will cater for anything that needs to be extended so that we don't have to be signing another deal and signing another deal. So it's 3 months initially, then we'll review as we go, and then it may go up to, whenever the UIF possibly runs out of money. So that's where we are on that.
Okay, great. And we've had a lot of questions around if I only apply for TERS at the end of May, or my employees are currently on annual leave, I'll only need to access it from June. Will this be possible? It's 3 months, and with the potential of extending if required. And Chief, you'll definitely let us know if that happens. I can see Bianca in the chat asked the question around lodging a claim per month or lodging it for the full 3 months essentially. And Desiree, correct me if I'm wrong, it's monthly, correct?
As far as we know, it's monthly.
Okay, perfect. All right.
I just want to deal with a question that's been coming through quite a lot, and that is, what happens if you have less than 10 employees?
Okay, tell us.
So the answer to that is that if you've got less than 10 employees, if you're running a payroll and paying PAYE and you have all the SARS numbers, you still use the TERS process. If, however, you don't have that and you are paying your employees on an Excel spreadsheet or in some other manner, then you would have to use separate documentation. And I have been given that documentation, so if anyone's in that situation, they can just call me.
Okay. You wouldn't be able to share it with us, and we can share it with everyone, was it?
I can share it with you.
Okay, that would be great. All right.
If you don't want to go through the process where they have to use credit to get a TERS payment.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to actually try and get through some of the Q&A that's come through live. Some of the questions I can see we have responded to, so I'm going to try and start a little bit down from the bottom. Can I legally pay my monthly staff at a different percentage to my casual staff, or is this discrimination? Is that, it's not really a TERS question, I guess. Desiree, do you want to weigh in on that?
I prefer Anthony to answer that.
Anthony, do you want to weigh in?
Sorry, Natalia, can you just repeat the question?
Sure.
I couldn't quite pick up.
Can I legally pay my monthly staff at a different percentage to my casual staff, or would this be discrimination?
It's a complex question, but let me try and answer it at a basic level. If the staff are doing the same job, because I'm not entirely sure what you mean by casual labor versus permanent staff, but if they're doing the same work, certainly you might run into problems of discrimination on the basis of salary, and that there is a requirement for equal pay for equal work. And that's probably as best as I can answer it now. Certainly within a business itself, bearing in mind that some people are able to work and others are not able to work, you shouldn't run into any problems around discrimination if you're paying some employees who are working, and those employees who are not able to work, you're not paying them and would be processing a TERS claim.
Okay. Such an interesting question from, I think it's Sheena. Sorry if I've mispronounced your name. If you get TERS UIF for your staff, do you have to pay normally monthly UIF submission based on their monthly wages? Desiree.
That's a good question.
It is. It's so interesting.
I actually don't know the answer to that. Yeah, because if you're not paying, then basically you're not paying UIF at all. But if you're paying on a reduced basis, then you would pay according to what the reduced basis is, I would think. But I can check that one for you.
Yeah, I'd love to have the answer to that one. That would be really, really great. Okay, so a lot of the questions that have come in, we actually have answered in the webinar, and please just do listen to the recording when we release it, hopefully by tomorrow, because I think you will see that a lot of the questions are answered. Oh, okay. If employees are on a shutdown for say 3 months until the end of June, or the application, do I capture shutdown end date as the 30th of June, or capture for the month of April only? It's for the month, correct, Desiree?
It's for the month, yes. Okay,
right. You see, I'm getting better at this. A question that's come up quite a lot is around foreign nationals with valid work permits. So does that impact at all on their ability to claim TERS on the behalf of their foreign employees? Because they don't have a 13-digit ID number necessarily. So how do we deal with foreign employees?
Okay, so that was a change that was made to the UIF legislation in 2018. We now cover our foreign nationals even if they don't have a 13-digit ID book. So they are covered, and that was reinforced in the legislation, which was passed on the 1st of November last year.
Okay. People asking for links. Yes, no problem. We'll give you the links. And people wanting your email address, Desiree, you're going to be very popular. Okay, let's just see more links. People asking if they should try and reapply if they haven't heard anything back from the UIF, and Chief has already answered that. No, you don't reapply. You just let him know that you have applied so that he understands. Do you have to be a member of the Tourism Business Council or SATSA to be covered by the preferential treatment agreement signed with the UIF? Chief, this is a good one for you. So do you have to be a SATSA member? Do you have to be a Tourism Business Council member to benefit from your wonderful agreement?
Look, when we signed the agreement, we did take into consideration the fact that, there will be people that are outside of associations, which is not preferable for us. But nonetheless, these are people that are within the industry. We always encourage people to fall under the association. However, they are included. It's everyone within the industry. You don't have to be a member of any association, although we want you to be, because it's helpful and useful to be a member of association. Point in case, what we're doing today is as a result of being a member of association. So it's not necessarily that you're not going to be preferred. As long as you're in the tourism industry, you'll receive preferential treatment, and hopefully you will see the benefit of being a member of an association. You don't have to be a member of TBCSA. TBCSA has very few members, which are mostly associations. So you have to be a member of association who is then a member of TBCSA. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Lots of people want Chief's email address, and we will share Chief's email address. We will share all the links on the SATSA website. I promise you the links will all be there. Just please go to the SATSA coronavirus website tomorrow and pull the information off there. Francois, if employees are not full-time, casual or freelance, so probably tourist guides in this case, and the monthly income is variable, can they claim UIF if different employers contributed? I gather if they were registered for UIF, would that be correct, Desiree?
Yeah, if payment was made on their behalf by UIF, then they would have a claim.
Okay. What is the
But
PA?
if they're freelancing, then they often aren't on payroll. They aren't being paid through the payroll. But if they're paid through the payroll, then they should have a claim.
Okay. Christopher would like to know what the PAYE reference number is referred to on the online application. Is this the number as per SARS that features on the EMP 201 return?
Yes.
Desiree, yes?
Yes, that would be that number.
Christopher answered. There we go. Can we submit for the second lockdown now already, or must I wait for the first claim to pay out? Chief or Desiree, can you weigh in on that, or Anthony?
Talia, I think that I see a lot of questions coming through that, and there's some confusion. The TERS is applicable for a period of 3 months, and it's available to employers that have been affected by COVID-19. Whether there's a lockdown or not, TERS is available. So there seems to be a misunderstanding that you can only apply for TERS while there's a lockdown. That's not the case. It's if your business is affected generally by COVID-19 for a period of 3 months, you can make use of TERS. Hope that answers it.
Thank you. And potentially longer if Chief and the National Department of Tourism has decided that that is the case, but it's 3 months limited to now. Vivian has asked a question I did receive previously about TERS being paid through the company. So she was under the impression that a company could apply on behalf of the staff and provide the staff's bank details and ask for payment to be made directly to the staff. Is that not the case? Must payment from TERS be sent to the company and then the company will distribute it to their staff? Desiree, I know you've touched on it. Maybe you could just clarify that for us.
I think the Department of Labour is going to be under tremendous pressure to process this payment, and it is much easier for them to make a single payment into the company's bank account than to try and pay individual people and confirm their bank accounts individually. So I think, to be fair to the department, we need to give them the company's bank account and ideally pay the amount out to the employees through payroll.
Deline, I will answer this question and ask Desiree to just weigh in if I'm wrong. So she said, if the director of a company doesn't pay UIF, will he be able to claim for the relief UIF? And I guess the response is no, because he isn't registered for UIF. I think we have said that, correct, Desiree?
If he hasn't paid his insurance premium, then he doesn't have a claim.
It's an insurance, that's the point. Okay. What do you fill in as employment end date, as they have not been dismissed or retrenched? Alta has asked. Desiree.
Okay, so again, it's exactly the same as if you've got someone going on maternity leave. The end date is the last day that this person received salary. So for people on layoff, it would be the last day that they got paid. But now we've got a situation where some people aren't being laid off, they're getting short pay, so just leave it blank.
Glenn has asked, if you emailed your application last night, do you now need to resubmit on the online system? Again, just based on, I think, the feedback that we have received, no. You just need to make sure the chief is aware of it. You don't need to resubmit on the online system because we now have an online system. Desiree, am I right?
Yeah, some people have had their applications rejected and they've been asked to resubmit on the online system. So I think you just follow up with the call center and see where your application is.
Okay, 107 questions that we're trying to deal with. Okay, if I pay salaries for April but reduce the salaries from May for all employees, can we claim from May to July? Yes, it's 3 months, so that would be correct, but you would do it on a monthly basis. How does one submit information at month end for monthly PAYE? The UIF amount plus any on top, Desiree?
The UIF doesn't attract tax. So it'll be interesting to see what the payroll companies do with it. But you would pay normal PAYE on your salary, your reduced salary.
Okay. Glenn is asking around bank confirmation letters for each employer's account only or for the employer and each employee? Bank confirmation letter.
Just for the employer.
Just for the employer. Okay. Can you change or update your applications after submission?
I haven't tried to do that. I think you would need to talk to the call center.
Okay. And the call center number you said is working. It's the UIF call center that's not working.
Yeah. It's very busy. You're going to have to hang on for a while, but it was working this morning.
Okay. Right. There's so many questions here, and I think we will deal with as many as we can in a text format, because many of these questions are actually exactly the same questions over and over again, and we have responded to it. Sorry, I'm just trying to juggle through, go through all of them. If you as an employer have applied on behalf of the employee, is there a way for the employee to track the application process? Well, the money's coming to the company, correct?
Correct.
So the employee would have to follow up with their company to ascertain where the application process is, if they manage to get an update, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. If I have submitted my claim via normal UIF claim process, is the advice to withdraw this claim and rather apply via the TERS process? How do I withdraw my individual application? Marie-Louise asks. I think we did touch on this earlier. Desiree, do you want to just clarify?
Yeah. I need to understand why the person tried to do it on their own. If they should have been applying for TERS, then they should just be included in the TERS payment and withdraw their claim. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask a few last questions. We're going to need to close up at 4:15. I promise you this is being recorded. We will release it widely, and we will also transcribe it and respond to as many of the questions that we've received on the Q&A as we can. Please just keep a lookout on the SATSA website for that and for your mailers as well. What happens if I have a staff member that was due to start working for our company on the 1st of May after serving notice with their previous employer? Can we apply on their behalf? They haven't started working yet.
Desiree, you want to answer that?
Yeah, if they've been, yeah, it's a difficult one because what a lot of companies have done is they've just said to the person, look, I'm sorry, the job that we thought we had available for you is no longer available. But if you've been paying UIF, then it should be possible to add you to that payroll.
Perhaps let me add in, Natalia, that
Sure.
you have a contractual obligation to take on the employee in terms of your new contract of employment. Certainly, if that position has been affected by COVID, in other words, your business has been affected and you can no longer pay that employee, you would be entitled to look to claim on TERS. So I can't see that as a problem at all.
Colin has asked a question that I've actually seen quite a lot, and we've spoken about you not being able to apply if you haven't been registered with UIF. But let's say there's a glitch in the system and your UIF profile is not 100% up to date with details, and the UIF is closed, so they're not responding to any emails, which means there's no way for you to actually rectify the situation. What do you do in that scenario, Desiree?
So is this a company that has developed a problem?
Yeah.
Okay, then I think between Shafiwa and myself, we should be able to resolve something if they just send it themselves.
Okay. Right. Let's see what else we've got here. What about applying for new staff that has only been on payroll and made UIF contributions for 1 month and now laid off? Assuming they weren't making UIF contributions prior to starting with the company, I assume. If they have only been making UIF contributions for 1 month, can they still claim?
Yep, the TERS is not linked to credit.
Of course. That's it. Okay. What if you are paying UIF through SARS?
Okay, so SARS is the collection agent for the UIF fund. So they collect UIF on behalf of companies and then they pay it across to the commissioner. Okay. So that's why we have two numbers. We have the number that UIF is collected from, and if you look at your PAYE number, your UIF number and your skills development levy number are the same. They just have a different initial in the front. But the commissioner has a different number for that company.
Okay.
So
yeah.
When SARS pays the money across, they then credit you to the registration number that the UIF commissioner has for the company.
Right. Yeah, lots of questions coming in around that UI reference number and not the SARS number, and where do I get that? So that's clearly a pain point. A lot of people having that situation.
Yeah, so the UIF number has been issued by the commissioner. There's somewhere in your company paperwork, you should have a copy of that number. And it's the number that you would normally fill in on the UI-19 form when someone's claiming retrenchment pay or maternity pay.
Okay. All right. On that note, I'm going to close the webinar. I want to thank Desiree, Shafiwa, Anthony and David for being on the call with us today and for getting through so many questions and being so brief with your responses. And we, as I said, will be sending through the information to you, so you will have access to it. We're not going to leave you high and dry. Thank you for participating. Thank you for posting your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get through all of them. We will have another webinar soon. And yes, just stay safe, stay sane, and we'll get through this together. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you Desiree and Anthony. And Chief, goodbye.